So welcome to Satsang. Namaste. So, as it is pretty much the day after Christmas, I felt it would be nice to connect into the energy of Christ. Most people knew the topic tonight, and the Bible speaks about many different principles of goodness and how to be a good person in general, which is very nice. How to do good things, be kind to people, don't steal, don't lie, etc. But there seems to be something kind of more profound behind Christ's teachings, which I call it as like the mystical path, which I feel a lot of people miss. They miss that sort of deeper, subtler energy or power that comes from him as a guru. And that's another sort of controversial word. People don't like the word guru, but guru just means that he or she who leads you from darkness to light. And so therefore Christ would be considered as such a being. And so his actions and his words represented goodness, but one could say perhaps the major reasons why the disciples particularly hung out with Christ is because they were having satsang with him. They wanted to kind of tune in and connect into his energy and power and grace and love. And just being in the presence of that vibration was enough to change their energy field, change their aura, change their chakras, change their energy channels and all of that, so that their actions and their words and their thoughts would naturally be in alignment with that energy, right? Because you've probably met many people who you tell them do this and do this and do this to be a good person, and yet no matter how hard they try, they still can't do or say those things. They can't seem to change, and that's usually because the energetics within them are so sort of heavy and so blocked that their actions don't easily align with the principles of goodness. That's why the energy is so important to support the transformation of those three things. Do no evil, think no evil, see no evil, all that. Like, if you don't have the energetics, it will be very difficult for a person to change deeply and significantly. Like, I'll give you an example. If, let's say, one is a compulsive liar, and you said to that person, stop lying, they could understand the concept and they can try maybe for a day, but since the program of lying is so embedded energetically in their system, it may almost be impossible for them to change until they work on themselves to heal on more of the depths of their being. And when I say a deeper part, I mean that most of the habits and patterns are subconscious and unconscious. Meaning we don't even know that we're doing them. So if we're lying, we may even not even know that we're lying. Or if we're cheating or stealing or whatever, we may not even recognize that we're doing that. So the energy of satsang that you receive or connect into with a great being such as Christ kind of penetrates inside you and starts to clear away those places, those subconscious and unconscious energies that we may not be able to see ourselves because they're blind spots. They're so deeply programmed that it requires, you could say, a divine being to help us to break out of those blind spots, to actually see them for what they are. And once, we talked about this, like once you actually become aware of what it is, you actually see it, that's like the first major step in that particular negative pattern dissolving. But if it doesn't even come into your awareness or consciousness, similarly, I'll give you like an example. When you go and put on your shoes, normally you'll put on one shoe first and the other shoe second. You don't think about which shoe you're doing it. It's just an automatic, compulsive sort of thing. Same idea with brushing your teeth. Oftentimes we brush our teeth. Do you ever try brushing your teeth with the opposite hand? Like, that's an example of breaking through a subconscious pattern. Normally we just do the teeth automatically, get so programmed in our system that we don't even know that we're doing it. It's just happening. So this path of enlightenment seems to be about bringing all of our egoic patterns to the surface, and through that awareness we're able to sort of let them go. But to see them often takes a powerful energetic presence to affect us in such a way to bring them to the surface. That's why satsang is so helpful. So particularly with Christ, it was all about love and compassion, kindness, care, you know. So of course, people who are connecting into his energy are probably going to have a lot of, we'll say, heart karma or heart issues come up. When I say heart, I mean kind of more like an emotional heart, feelings of resistance to love. So if you do a lot of love purification or heart purification, you're pushing out things inside your heart chakra that are not in alignment with the love. And a lot of times we're not open to people. We may be open to our closest ones, our loved ones, we may be open to them. But when it comes to others, we often have like a lot of mistrust and betrayal issues and things like that. So automatically there's a repulsion of people because we mistrust. So, you know, I think it was Christ that said, in order to get to heaven, you need to be like a child, like a child, so innocent, where you see people, but you don't have a lot of judgments or strong opinions about what they are or who they are. And therefore, that childlike understanding can be such an open heart to receive people with love, even if they're a mean person. The child doesn't even really get that because they haven't been conditioned yet to shut down to possibly being harmed, possibly being hurt, possibly being betrayed. So, you know, throughout our childhood and adulthood, we get so affected by people who oftentimes hurt us, maybe even accidentally, or they don't even know that they're hurting, that we've been hurt by their words or their actions, that gets stuck in us, and then there's a projection of the next person who we get close to is going to betray us or not be kind to us or attack us or reprimand us or whatever our issue is. So those are the blocks that I'm talking about around the heart that usually we don't see, and why we're not fully open to the world like a child would be. So in one sense, you could say Christ was teaching us and still teaches us how to become a child at heart and live in the pure innocence. You know, we've met many people, including ourselves, that can be very sort of skeptical and ironic and like very hardened about the nature of people. You know, like recently I went to India, and you know, there's always in India, especially the places that I went to are very remote, and so many of them had hardly seen a Caucasian, right? So it was such a wonder to see a Caucasian person. There were so many stares and like looking in awe. Who is this? Almost like an alien, you know? And so people would want selfies and pictures. Even you've experienced this too. It's so unusual. And so, or they would want to just sit next to me and ask me questions about life and say, there would be usually the typical questions, and you sit next to a person and go, what country? And then you tell them USA. What city? Traveling with anyone? Family? And then there would be the whole series. And just the sitting down and having conversation with them was exciting enough to have conversation, even with the little English that they knew, right? So I suppose one way to spread joy in India is to have conversations with people who would love to speak to you in English, and have a conversation with a Caucasian person. Ooh, very exciting. Like that was a great joy to many people. If I was could be in a train or walking around a city or wherever, or in a store, there was always a certain excitement around it. And there was a word for people who were from out of town or other countries. They called them foreigners. Right? But if imagine you're an innocent child and you don't even know what color is, or necessarily what language is even. So how do you even really comprehend with the innocence of a child that there's such thing as difference between me and you with color or with language, when I don't even know what that is, because I'm living in the innocence of a child. I can't even make that distinction or differentiation and then apply all the conditioning that goes around being white or black or Indian or whatever it is. None of those things would even cross my mind. Interesting, on a sort of side note regarding the child, it's been said that child, for the first, maybe even 2 years or something, may not even know that they're separate from their mother. Don't even realize that there's I'm here, I'm me and you're you. There's not even that feeling. So talk about an amazing innocence, right? That's coming close to a sense of oneness. There's so much love for the mother, because there's also a kind of dependence and an incredible connection, and so much love that you can't even feel or difference between me and mother. So that childlike sensibility could dawn on an adult, where an adult sort of feels that connection and love because they have let go of their conditioning and are living in this sort of presence where there's none of those thoughts of multiplicity or duality happening in the mind. So perhaps Christ was trying to teach that kind of love, which is a phenomenal kind of love, right? Because then there's no resistance to anyone. It's not just mother-daughter or mother-son love, but there's sort of a universal love, because everyone is in that category of I can't feel or sense separation because my consciousness is completely beyond the mind. It's in a different dimension. And so even the mind is not even identifying with the body itself. It's just a sense of love that is everywhere and in everything. And so all actions and thoughts and words that come from that child end up being in alignment with a sort of now universal principle of love. And it seems that it was difficult for the disciples, let alone anyone who followed Christ, to truly follow that, to connect into that kind of consciousness. Again, the Bible gives the philosophy in words, but are you receiving the mystical teachings of Christ, which are underneath the surface? Because the Bible has become sort of so watered down, because it's been translated by so many people and passed down, that it's lost that mystique or mystical transmission. So now when you read the Bible, it's more like written by egos. So it doesn't have the same power of transmission as, let's say, receiving the words from Christ directly. And usually that will happen where a guru will be trying to pass down the knowledge to the disciples, or whoever the disciples are, but the disciples have such strong egos that they can't contain the teachings or the consciousness of the guru. They haven't reached that state. So then the true Christ consciousness can be kind of lost in the lineage. And then it can be just like a priest talking about intellectually what the Bible means, and some even cool ideas regarding the Bible and its different underlying meanings, but the energy of the priest is flat, even though they're talking about the Bible and Christ. So I should have a card, which I do. And you've seen this one before, but you can imagine that you're seeing it for the first time. The card here contains the presence of Christ blessed in it, so it has the transmission. So all you have to do really is you look at the card and you set your intention, you could say, to feel into the blessing of the card. And just stating that to your mind and looking at it perhaps can already bring you into alignment with the transmission of the card itself. That's what a blessing is. Any object that's is blessed truly by a saint becomes a sort of piece of that saint. So now you have it with you. So even when the saint is physically gone, the presence is still alive in that object. And that's why these are so helpful, because oftentimes you can't be around Christ. I mean, obviously, at least the body of Christ in that form has died, but you oftentimes can't be around a guru all the time. So it's nice to have that blessed thing that you can focus on and connect into. And if you can sense it enough, it'll take you into the state of Christ consciousness, and you can meditate on that and feel a shift or a change somewhere inside you. Oftentimes, in this case, Christ often has an impact on the heart space and the heart energy, and that can open and become more spacious and soft and warm. And another very easy way to bring the power of Christ into the space is simply to ask if he would be here, even in his sort of subtle body, be here in the room with us. If that doesn't really work for you, you can kind of imagine that he's sort of standing however you want to imagine Christ, because people have many different images and pictures of what Christ might look like, but imagine he's sort of standing here, maybe he's dressed in robes and has a staff, and maybe he's holding a lamb, or whatever you're feeling, whatever kind of moves you or connects to you. If you can imagine that image as if he's here, you ask for Christ, if he could be here present with us tonight, that we may really feel his energy and his love. And just having that prayer together, even online. And online you can imagine Christ being in your room where you're at, visualizing him, seeing him. And the amazing thing is, the more you sort of desire that, the more you can really imagine it. It's like you're literally calling him. Like the saint comes and says, I'm here. What do you need? What do you want? Those people who have an intensity or a yearning to be with that saint oftentimes have the most powerful prayers, because they're so focused. This is all they want, is to be with Christ, or to see Christ, or to feel that energy, that indeed that being comes. And then you could imagine now the Christ becoming kind of like more of a small figure, and being kind of entering into your heart space and abiding there, kind of sitting in meditation in the center of your heart. Perhaps he's kind of glowing, radiant. You could imagine he kind of places his hands in prayer inside your heart, and as he connects his hands, that light of love sort of floods your whole heart space. And then you could imagine that he kind of brings his arms up, and as he brings his arms up, it sort of spreads this wave of peace throughout your whole body and mind and starts to still all of the waves of thought that are running through you. Everything becomes still as he raises his, kind of like when he raises his arms to the ocean and the whole ocean becomes still. All the waves become soft and quiet in this raging ocean. Same here, raising his arms. All of your thoughts, the ocean of thinking, just becomes soft and quiet and still. So just let yourself relax into this stillness. One thing that Christ emphasized in his life was trust. He would often say, trust in me, I am the light, I am the way. And that trust, willingness in one sense to believe that indeed Christ was a divine being, and if you could trust completely in him, that you would open to his energy more, that you'd be able to feel that energy inside you. So perhaps one thing he might say is, I am with you always. Whether the body is gone or not, that doesn't matter, because Christ identified with Christ's consciousness, not with the body. So interesting when we sort of celebrate Christ dying and then right raising after 3 days, from the grave, and this great, amazing thing. Who says that Christ died, right? Who says? This is made up by humans. Christ dying, no such thing. In that state of consciousness, one is eternal. One is united with everything that is. And that's why Christ had those powers. when you know yourself to be everyone and everything, you are the whole, then you're unlimited. You have control over the ocean. You can still the ocean. No problem. This is not an issue for divine beings. The divine being is unlimited. So, but the point I'm trying to make is like, how much trust do you have in such a being? Do you feel that? And sometimes people would need miracles. Dividing the bread and the fish and feeding many people. Like, people see that and go, oh, that must be proof that he's divine. Therefore, I believe in him. But the true guru doesn't have to prove to you that they're divine by doing miracles. But it can help. But there's also one problem with that, is that then it draws attention to the guru, and the guru can be harassed. Will you do this for me? Will you do this for me? If you've got this power, will you do this? That's why many of the great saints hide their secret talents. They don't want to get noticed by people and then therefore harassed. Once you start to be known as a guru, you can get in trouble and ultimately killed, which he was. At least his body was killed. And in that case, he didn't mind. He didn't mind so much that the body was killed. It was more important to him to bring the teachings to people. Like, kind of to open this dimension of love on earth that was so badly needed, particularly at that time, and now as well. But that time it was desperately needed. People were praying, please send us a savior that can bring sort of harmony and love to the world. And so his bigger mission, perhaps, was not just to heal some people with his hand and, fix their blindness and cure them of disease or something, leprosy or something like that, but rather to bring a sort of gigantic field of consciousness into the realm where everyone can connect into it, because that's what a true guru has, such an extraordinary transmission that millions and millions of egos can be affected by that and softened. And so the Christ energy, that soft, sweet, kind, loving energy, so many people could benefit from that. But particularly if you trust, if you believe. The moment you say, oh, you're evil and you're trying to usurp my power, you're endangering my position, you shut down to the grace, and then you can't receive the healing. So that trust and faith is huge if you really want to connect the vast love of a divine being. It's a sort of cornerstone of the spiritual path. And some people might call that devotion or bhakti. Bhakti is the word for devotion in Sanskrit, which is why there's a sort of beautiful aspect of Christ and people who follow Christ. Is there's the devotion of singing songs, gospels and things, of praising Christ. Like, you praise Christ not necessarily to quote-unquote put him on a pedestal, but to awaken the love in your own heart. Oh, what a loving being. And you're so in love with this being that it awakens your own love. It's funny, because it's not another being's love. It's your love that you're trying to awaken. And Christ would say, in fact, it said also that he said this, which is, you can be like me and more. Not, I'm way up here and I'm looking down on you and you guys are all sad. Not like that. Like, a divine being doesn't see any difference between me and you. And scratching his head going, why do you think you are so small? Why do you believe that? Almost like kind of puzzled innocently. Why are you believing that? That doesn't make any sense. Because the Christ being sees the truth that everything is just the one God. And all religions are saying that. Everything is, they're saying God is infinite, all-powerful, omnipotent, omnipresent. If that's true, God is omnipresent, then it's not just in the Christ character, it's in every being and every object and everything that you could possibly imagine or see in this dimension, all dimensions in all time and space, and beyond. There's still only the one. And why aren't you seeing that? The divine being is scratching their head, wondering. And out of compassion and mercy, God, as pure consciousness, incarnates itself into a body, sends it down so that humans can interact face to face with something that they can understand. Because if it was just a rock, it might be harder. Though there are, some rocks on Earth that are highly evolved rocks, very, very divine rocks. But a lot of people, when they look at a rock, it's just a rock. But if they see a living person who's the embodiment of truth and is going around holding lambs and petting deer and donkeys and curing people of disease, now that's something to interact with. That's a great way to connect into people's hearts. We want someone to love, someone tangible. And so we try, especially, and that's why it's interesting, there's a lot of romance and stories about Christ that may or may not be true, but I don't mind those stories, whether they're true or not true, because those stories are meant to build your devotion and love towards Christ, to help you make a deeper connection, even if they're not true. Who really cares, eh? We want fantasy stories, because fantasy stories can build our devotion and love, whether they're lies or not. It's kind of like the belief in Santa. Kids love Santa so much, it gives them so much joy, it's so much excitement. Why would you want to tell the kid that, sorry, Santa doesn't exist, go back to bed? That would disappoint a child so much, it would kind of ruin their Christmas spirit. So some lies are very good. Fantasies, wonderful. Stories, beautiful, whether they're true or not.
But when they find, the children, we were just talking about that in my family, and when they find out, then it's very upsetting.
Then it can be upsetting, yeah.
I was wondering.
But it's at least you could create the world for that child at that time in an innocent place. When they get older and maybe they get more skeptical, it's understandable. We can all get disillusioned at some point by probably everything. Most things we get disillusioned. Even people who we think love us or whatever, and then suddenly hurt us, we're like, what just happened? I thought that person would love me unconditionally. But the problem with that idea, the belief, that partner will love me unconditionally forever and ever and ever, it's there's still an ego. To have that expectation that that person is going to love me to such an extraordinary degree, no one's going to love you like that. No one is, except a being like Christ, who has immersed themselves in the sea of love. And this is a little bit different topic, but yeah. So, let's chant a mantra to connect into. Let's try this one. There's an energy of compassion. In Sanskrit, the word for compassion is karuna. You heard that word? Yeah, the karuna, compassion. And so just kind of thinking about the word and feeling into it, you can tap into the sense of compassion in your own heart. And, I think all of us have chanted the mantra, Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Karuna Panasanstita Namastasye 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 Namo Namah. So for people online, mantra for compassion, Ya Devi sarvabhuteshu karuna rupena sanstita. Namastasye, 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 namo namah. If anyone knows that mantra, they can type it in, just so people can read it. I don't have it here, but we've done it many times. Some of us have kind of already memorized it. If not, probably would be helpful to at some point really get that mantra, because it's called the wish-fulfilling mantra. Anything your heart desires, it'll come true. It's a wish-fulfilling mantra. I used to play a game on the computer called Wizardry, and if you were a wizard, you could cast spells, and they were like, you would say a word, and then the spell would, heal you, or it would bring light or fire or whatever it is that you wished, water, some sort of power that wizardry spell would have. Mantra is like that. It's a power word, a power seed. And in fact, that's also confirmed by the Bible. In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God. Right? Meaning God is in the Word, and the Word is God. So the very fact that you chant the mantra, you're saying everything is God, everything is in the form of compassion, let's say. Everything is God in the form of compassion. Meaning that's a divine quality. So it's a divine spell. It puts you, this mantra binds you into a spell of compassion, so that you can't see anything or feel anything other than that energy. You become immersed, lost in the energy and power of compassion. So that's the idea of the mantra. Very, very sort of extraordinary. And this mystical practice has been done for ages and ages. So it's not new. It's worked. So you can chant it with me as you get it. The tune is pretty easy. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Karuna Rupena Samstita. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Karuna Rupena Samstita. Namastasye, 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 Namo feel that mantra glowing in your heart. And awakening the softness, the kindness, empathy, understanding within the heart. Just to start with humans and to develop a sort of empathy for humans in particular, as we often have resistance towards people. And just consider that every person has the same challenges: anger, judgment, sadness, heartbreak, despair, hardships, physical hardships in life, emotional traumas, accidents, disease, so many fears. Every single person you meet on this planet has the same thing. Every person is in the same boat, struggling with the same issues, to a certain degree, more or less, depending on which particular issue is up for them. You know, we're all the same. We're all, in one sense, kind of struggling with the same thing, same things. So ultimately, how can we really criticize anyone when we have the same thing? Instead, we could have a soft spot in our heart, in a corner of our heart that just remembers, this is a human being who's going through the same human struggle that I am. So if I were in that person's shoes, what would I need to feel better? Maybe simply just a kind smile, some sort of acknowledgement. A touch on the shoulder. sometimes it's really easy to please someone just by giving them momentary acknowledgement that they even exist. Many people I met in India were kind of like untouchables, and so hardly anyone noticed them or sat down with them. Particularly those who are isolated like that need that the most. That someone loves them in the world. Someone is there. Would care even for a moment to acknowledge them. Sometimes one simple acknowledgement can stick in the mind and the heart of that person for the rest of the day, where they just remember that kind gesture. And it could be meaningful for them for the rest of their life, even. This world is not so easy. Many difficulties. And if we can make people's lives even a little bit easier, we've done something. And I also remember going through Somnath city, Somnath temple, which is kind of like Western India in the Indian Ocean. And there are a few of these people whose legs are not functioning. And so they're kind of like folded legs, crouched on these roller, almost like a skateboard. Maybe you've seen that before. They kind of roll themselves along, and that's how they travel, because they can't walk. And they just wait on the side of the road, and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people are passing by in these busy corners, and they just wait out with their hands outstretched, waiting for someone, because they can't really make a living like a normal person, right? So they're really relying on good graces of people who might look kindly at them, or even look at them at all. And so I remember, I sometimes would choose restaurants, kind of like the finer restaurants in India, because they had cleaner food, cleaner water, cleaner food, and all that stuff. Just easier for a Western body to digest, get sick. And oftentimes, to get to the restaurants, you'd have to go to the steps, and then this is the upper echelon, so to speak, where everything was kind of a little bit fancier. And it would look down on the streets, and I would be eating my Indian food, fancy Indian food, so to speak, and looking down on the street, down below, and there were these people holding out their hand, hoping to get some food or money to support themselves. And, that was hard. It was hard. So what I would do is I would purposely not eat all of my meal. Sometimes, oftentimes, I would do that, and I would bring the rest of it in a bag, and I would bring it down, and I would give it to one of the... And I remember this one young man who was on one of the skateboards rolling around with his paralyzed legs. And I gave him the leftovers, and I didn't really note his reaction too much, but I gave it to him, and I think I felt like he was kind of surprised. And then when I was walking back through this sea of people, and he was there on the corner, and I was like kind of looking through the crowd, and I saw his face, and he saw me, through the crowd, and he was just beaming. He just like lit up and was like smiling, and it was so warm. And I thought, wow, like he's suddenly very happy. You know, it was like perhaps during the day, all day, you know, you're struggling to get something, some subsistence, and then someone gives you something and you're so surprised, you know. Food from a fancy restaurant, I mean, it's kind of like, who does that? And that somehow, that really stuck in his mind. And so it just continued on. So when he saw me again, he was just really joyful. So it seems like a small thing, just to give leftovers to a person. But when I saw his face, in his happiness through the crowd, I felt connected with him, like we were the same. That it wasn't some guy on the street who was just nothing, you know, just begging and pathetic or something like that, which could easily be seen like that, right? Because that's why a lot of these people aren't even paid attention to or glanced at as if they're worthless or something. So that warm connection that I received from him helped me to feel my humanity inside him. And there was this sort of like loving connection and beauty, sort of, you could say, brotherhood. And that could be a sign of an awakening of compassion. Because it got it in a deeper level. You know, it's like more of a heart and emotional sense rather than just because you could be also going to volunteer, let's say, in making sandwiches or something and packaging them to feed the poor or something, but that can be done with no heart. I've done it. I've volunteered where, you know, we're in this temple and we're all making food for the poor and we're all working hard and giving bags away and stuff like that, but I'm feeling nothing. Maybe I'm feeling pride that I'm doing something, you know, how cool am I that I'm giving food away, but I'm not feeling this, right? Like we're the same. I'm just feeling somehow maybe I'm doing my duties. There's a difference. So I'm saying it's like, how can you step from just doing it by rote because you're supposed to do it versus genuinely doing it out of love because you feel something for that person and there's actually a connection, a deeper sense of we are the same, we're brother and sister, we're brothers. You know, because see how there's a kind of more of a warmth in that statement rather than I'm going to feed the poor. Here's the category of the poor and I'm doing my duty. It's like, no, this man who sits on his skateboard, who has debilitated legs, is me. By giving food to him and nourishing him, I'm giving to myself. Like that's, and you know it. It's not just an intellectual exercise. Oh, it's a philosophy, you know, this is what I believe or something. It's like you could say you believe that, but do you really get it? It becomes kind of like poignant. Do you know what I mean? Like the poignant feeling. It's like reading beautiful poetry. When you're interacting with someone, maybe someone who you never thought you would be able to connect to, and you feel a heart-to-heart connection, it's like poetry. So those moments made the trip worthwhile. sometimes I could walk in a temple and feel dry. You know, it doesn't mean anything. Just a rock, you know, like the Shiva Lingam, just a rock. Or I would connect to the Shiva Lingam, which often happened, and it would put me into this transcendental state of meditation. I go, ooh, I'm so high. Which, that used to be my primary practice, right? The sort of higher transcendental states and on beyond. But when I started to touch into the life of my own heart, I was like, but this is like water going into a dry field and all the plants suddenly becoming alive. It's like that. So I could either live a dry life where I have nice meditations, or I could touch into this care and kindness and compassion that is like so different. So different. It's like they're on completely different levels, you could say. And so as I touched into the heart, I realized like this is what I want. Even if I never become enlightened or free, if the hearts of beings could be touched with what I contribute, that that would be something special and worth living for. So I didn't go to India to connect necessarily to a bunch of temples. I mean, that was part of it. But it was like, why am I really here? And there's this like, I could feel sort of chasm in my heart between my heart and other people's hearts. So it's like, okay, what I'm really longing for is true connection. So I could go in the temple and have a transcendental experience, and then outside, here I'm connecting to the beggar, and I'm like feeling something so far beyond that. It's like, this is what my life's actually about. And the funny thing is the more experiences that I have like that, somehow it ends up naturally sending my mind into meditation states anyway. You know what I mean? Because the heart is the doorway into that space. And that, I feel, is what Christ was trying to teach. Like, look, if you really can feel what you're doing for people when you're contributing to their lives, your ego will kind of naturally dissolve away anyway, and you'll disappear into these beautiful, blissful, transcendental states as part of the course. You don't have to worry about that. Oh, I gotta get there. Gotta do all these practices to get there. It's like, what if I'm just present with the man on the side of the road and giving him a bit of attention? Like, that's more than words could describe it. So I call it poetry, right? Because poetry is words to describe something that's kind of bigger than the words. It's kind of like that. You know, the other kind of neat experience I had was, I did the same thing. You know, I went upstairs to this nice restaurant and then went down with the leftovers, and this time I gave it to a dog. I gave it to a dog that was kind of on the side of this temple. And, you know, I gave it to the dog, and he immediately started to really excitedly eat it. And I just kind of walked away. I didn't really pay attention too much. But I walked away, and I stood over here, and suddenly the dog, after he had eaten, comes over to me and literally starts to like rub against me and hug me. I was like, what happened? Oh, you're the dog. And he wanted to be right by my side. I like moved away a little bit. He moved closer. And he wanted to just sort of like hug me, and it was this sort of sweet appreciation that he was trying to give to me. Like, look, I'm so thankful for what you did. Maybe you don't realize really what you did and how wonderful it was to have that meal. You know, the dog had never had such rich foods before. He was so excited. He wanted to now be my friend. It was like he really wanted to be my friend. The cows, by the way, can be the same way too. They really like bananas. So, I suppose why I'm pointing this out to you is because you can notice those opportunities in your life to have these interactions. If we're always going from appointment to appointment to appointment, this thing to that thing, meet this thing, this person, then a lot of times we miss the possibility of making deeper connections through simply a glance, a smile, or giving someone some food. I mean, again, there's so many different ways that you can share love depending on the circumstance. It's not just about giving a Christmas present.
It even happened, I'm sure you know, because you drive a lot, with somebody in the car next to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only can it happen with someone in the car next to you, but it can be a wordless exchange. The person doesn't say a word to you, but somehow they have this gentle way that's just so sweet that you feel loved by them and they haven't said a word to you. You ever had that? I mean, imagine if you could share that with people. You don't say anything, but somehow the sense of you, your being, is sharing something that a person feels already warm and soft inside, and you haven't done anything. So, maybe that's what Christ was trying to emphasize. And maybe we can still follow those teachings and find moments of presence instead of kind of focusing on giving presents to people, you know, like gifts to people. We notice a moment where we can spend quality time with, you know, like the greatest gift I gave to my niece for Christmas wasn't the pumpkin bread that we gave her, but it was me sitting down and building Legos with her and following this book of instructions, and she's telling me, Uncle Brian, this is how you do it. Like, that was a gift to her. She wanted to spend time with her uncle building a set of Legos. And when I looked at the book and all the instructions, I was overwhelmed, by the way, by this Lego set. I don't know if I could do that. She had to teach me. After a while, I got the hang of it. But I mean, that was the gift that I could give to her. I realized it wasn't the thing that I was giving her. Together mantra for love, Anandam, Premanandam. That's Anandam, Premanandam. Anandam means bliss, and Prem means love. So, just simply being open to the energy and presence of the mantra as we sing. send deep gratitude to Christ Jesus for being here with us tonight, for helping us to feel our own heart, help us to know what love is, help us to value love and kindness and compassion, something important in our lives. So that we may live more fully, so that we may become more alive. So our field of our heart may be nourished by that water. Living water. Water the fields of other beings in our life. Share with them this energy and presence and love. And that our eyes may be open to see those opportunities to show a bit of kindness and brighten this world a bit, to leave it a better place.